What do I have as a candidate for this financial mistake?
Going to London
I
to study.
cheap shot, bro.
Main thing we wanted to share with all of you is what at least me and Shankar would have done differently, or the mistakes that we made, or things that we didn't do. Right? If we knew what we knew today, we might have done this maybe 10 years back when we started working.
Hello, boomers. Welcome back. It's been a long time since we all good together. Um, nice to see you all. Good morning to Ashwin. Good night to Shankar. And good evening to our guest for today, Body's Backfill O2. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. How is it going?
You tell us, London, London baby.
Yes,
Ama,
yes.
very first episode you're recording after you moved to London.
Yes, thank you. And our topic is also very relevant to my current lifestyle. London's been kind, but also cold, literally all the time. That's a lot of adjustment from Chennai's 40 degrees Celsius that I'm used to. But other than that, things have been fine, and it's good to be back and doing this. And this feels like a nice warm catch up. This is like my digital equivalent of a tea. Um, Today, one of the topics or one of the questions that all of us get asked, or maybe Ashwin and Shankar and Body, usually that you people get asked as people with a lot of experiences. Hey, I'm doing a job. How do I deal with matters of money in that job? So it could range from hey, when do I work in a bootstrap company? When is it okay to take a pay cut? Or it could be proper financial advice to the extent that we are capable of offering. None of us are experts on that subject, and there is also this very radical outlook on money when it comes to Gen Zs. So they have this you only live once way of life, and that's also why we have O2 here to give a contrarian view on how this generation thinks about money compared with how we do things. So those are the things that we are going to take a look at today.
Okay. Good, Krisbot. I know your spending and lifestyle would have drastically changed from Chennai, Srirangam to London. We'll kind of cover from the beginning, right? Or how we want to start. Let's kind of go with maybe Shankar and me on, because we've been 10, 11 years into the workforce, and we the kind of information we had when we started our career versus what I think all of you have today out there, be it either social media or all the financial influencers out there. We get to know a lot more, which is good in a way, which can also be too much to take, right? Like we're just going to talk about, hey, what's practical, what's more, what just happens in real life, and also how to navigate between money and the job that you like, kind of career as well. We'll just kind of tie it there. uh, but I'll kind of start with Shankar itself, right? uh, Shankar, when you started working, there will be a moment where you had your first big paycheck, or like after 1 2 years you would have saved enough. What was that big first investment or your first money thinking that you had, beyond paying rent, beyond paying for food?
Oh, that's a good
I wanted,
icebreaker.
Uh,
I
What is
wanted
your
to,
uh,
first big investment?
and this is something that I did. What was it?
I think for a long, this may not be early in my career. This is new and recent. I always wanted to buy an iMac, but I never could get myself to like pay for it because it's really expensive. Or the idea of paying like so much money for a computer still felt like too much. So the first thing I did, like a year ago, is like buy an iMac. Like I've never really wanted a car until now, or I've never really bought the typical things that a lot of people buy. But the iMac was always something I was eyeing for. So that's something that I got recently. What was it for you, Ashwin?
I think for me also it's not too early, but I think after 5 6 years I bought my first motorcycle. Uh, I got my Dominar, but then I saved enough before buying. Like I didn't take a loan on it. So I think I saved for like 6 7 months before buying that. So that was my first big
Right.
thing from
So
me to myself. Bought
I
a
think my first gift, actually, funnily, mine was the same as well. Like, I couldn't really afford a two wheeler until I started working, and I didn't want to, do this whole EMI thing simply because of the paperwork. So I was literally willing to wait out a whole year where I would take the EMI money and just put it in the bank as recurring deposit, and then at the end of the year, I had like 74,000, and I had to get one of those Dio analog version because the digital version costed like 2,600 rupees more, and at that time I couldn't afford that extra money. This was not even that long ago, so that's a special investment that I made. The other one, very early in my career, was thanks to my old boss and mentor. I got a Kindle. Again, these are things that you would consider a luxury purchase until then, if you had to do it in your parents' money. So those were the two for me. Or do anything that stands out for you?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a list. So I think
Yeah,
right
let's
after
start off with your first paycheck if you're gonna give us a list.
I think
yeah,
the
first paycheck,
generational
yeah.
difference is showing up. We had like one item, she has a list.
I mean,
Boomers versus Gen Z.
let's not forget that Krishna is also from my generation. Just that he acts a little differently, but otherwise, you know, he's he's still part of my generation.
Thanks for putting him in his place. Go for it.
So the very first thing I got from my salary, I think I saved up for like 3 months, and we were also working from home back then. I started working with Freshworks during the
That
COVID
really
time.
puts things into perspective, huh? She started working during pandemic.
COVID batch.
So I got a bike, Axis 125. Uh, that's my first investment. Then I got a mobile phone for my dad, Pixel 6 or 7, I think. That's number two. Then I also have a yearly or half yearly recurring investment that goes with Bobby Brown. That's one of the luxury
Boomers,
purchases
for
that I
those
do
of you who don't know, Bobby Brown is an ultra luxury
The
make
makeup
a
cosmetic.
brand.
brand.
Yeah, it's a cosmetic brand.
Okay, okay, good. Yeah, you were calling it investment, but it's like top spends that you
Yeah,
make
top
not
spends probably.
investments.
I mean, I would argue that it's an investment because you get it once and you get the best quality out of a makeup product. And also, it's something that you only, restock once a year or once every 6 months. So,
And this is
in
the
a
kind
way,
of radical view why we have you here.
I mean, I wanted to give you some more context, guys.
Okay, okay, thanks. Uh, okay, good. Yeah, now that we've kind of spoken about big purchases, big items that we bought, um, I think the main thing we wanted to share with all of you is what at least me and Shankar would have done differently, or the mistakes that we made, or things that we didn't do. Right? If we knew what we knew today, we might have done this maybe 10 years back when we started working. We'll kind of start with that. I think Shankar, you were very curious to
You
share
go.
your mistakes.
Your mistake. So the
You go first.
don't make the same.
See, I'll go first, but I wouldn't call this a mistake. But we kind of made decisions with what we know at that point in time, right? When I started working, I, I, the first thing at least I did was get into LIC, and it came from what you knew at that in your social circle at that point. The best thing you know is to start with that. It has its own benefits for sure, like the tax and what you get out of it, all of that is there. But I wish I started with something else, maybe mutual funds, and on that route, and not stick with this LIC in those, because end of the day, after 10 years, now that I'm seeing it, it's not that much. right? When you actually start, it might look like big money, but when you add all these cost of living that goes up, inflation and everything, uh, it isn't much. And I don't think it's like, at least in my point of view, it's not a very smart investment per se. And I, like, when I got into all of that, it made me think that, hey, I'm making an investment. So I didn't think of anything else, right? Like, in your head, you always think you are already investing. And like, you don't think of other avenues. That's one of the reasons probably I didn't venture into equity or mutual funds or anything else at that point in time. And I didn't get to it like at least 7 8 years later in my work career. And that also happened because someone else told me and advised me to go for it. That, yeah, like getting into things that you just know from your own social circle, this is all the information you have. So you just went for it.
Fair enough, fair enough. But so the lesson there is, in retrospect, a lot more due diligence would have served you better. Is that?
Yep.
How about you, Shankar? You have any candidates for worst financial mistakes?
Yeah, I was just thinking now. I think one thing is like keeping the money just in the savings account and not doing anything about it. That's definitely one. Two is I still see people doing this mistake now, like not planning their tax savings in advance, and in the last minute scrambling for what to do to put on their proofs, right? So I used to do that for many years. But then I learned that okay, there's this thing called ELSS funds, and you can
Yeah,
SIP into those things through the
that's the
year, so you
moment
can avoid
Neha
the
to pay a
scramble.
tax walked into all of our
Yeah,
lives.
basic things like that. Those two are things that pop up in my mind. The usual stuff of starting to invest early and all that is there, I think. But one of the stupidest things that I've thought about before is I've always thought that money doesn't matter. I don't know why. Probably I drank too much Kool-Aid from the internet, where people said that it's your skills, it's what you know, it's what you learn. But then all of those things that I read about actually were detrimental, right? So you spend a lot of time thinking about work or doing things, but then you spend very little time to think about your finances. So you don't really have to spend a lot of time thinking about finances early on, but for those major decisions, I think it's important to think clearly, like where you want to put your money and what do you want to plan, even if you spend like, let's say, 5 hours a total in the year, right? So I think not giving time to like think about money and plan how to use it, and just keeping it in the savings account, I think
Interesting.
that is my probably my
Feels like
biggest mistake.
it could have served really well for all of us if I knew Shankar much earlier in his career
I made the
when he
same
had
mistake. So
a ton of money in the bank, not knowing what to do. That's when friendships could have come in really handy. Um, what do I have as a candidate for this financial mistake? Um,
Going to London.
I cheap shot, bro. Okay, actually, it's an expensive shot. So, see, actually, up until then, I had a certain view on this, right? So, I'm going to give you a two-part answer to this. So, I'm not. So, I think the conclusion is to each their own. But the first part is, I think, for most part of my career, which is like a good 5 years, and it was also around the time when all this Think and Grow Rich or Psychology of Money, a lot of this pop culture money advice was really mainstream, right? And I sort of over indexed on saving money to the point where my experiences were detrimental. For context, but I was making like, say, 30 grand a few years back. My investment on housing was 5,000. Like, I lived in a uh, PG with sharing with four other people or eating very mediocre food. For me, it was okay because I was like, hey, I'm able to save like 10, 15,000. Just set that money aside for mutual fund or something. But in retrospect, I didn't have to over index that much on savings. Like, I could have lived a lot more comfortable lifestyle that would have paid me back in different ways. Like, I could have had a more comfortable environment to read a book, pick up a hobby. So I had to sideline a lot of my other interests simply because I just didn't have that. I had things invested in, long term savings, and my experiences were getting hurt. The second part is, funnily enough, that's how I lived like for 5 years, and all of a sudden when I moved to London, it sort of helped me. Like, I was in a position where I could, fork up whatever big funds that's needed to get your visa clearance, to pay for a college education and whatnot. Um, so I would say if I hadn't moved to London, what I did was really ridiculous. But in the end, it all worked out well for me, wherein I was able to stump up that money because I had a certain amount left in the bank. So yeah,
I
to sum up to
yeah.
each thing.
Mm-mm.
I was actually thinking maybe earlier in our careers when we start out, it makes sense to like focus on saving and investing and not spend on conveniences and comforts. But in my case, what happened was until like someone opened up my eyes, I realized I'm actually not spending on things even though I'm making more money. Like after, even though I was making more money after a few years, right? So once I realized that, I started spending on things like getting a better house, renting a better house, or like a bigger house, right? I started spending on things that gave me comfort and made me feel good. I think it's okay to save and invest, but also like increase the amount of money you spend on comforts over time,
Yeah,
and not necessarily like continue to skimp and like
that's true.
stick to
Now
like
Shankar
whatever
is in his
percentage you earn.
billionaire era where he buys
Yeah,
artwork.
and for context on that, right? Last month when I was visiting India, Shankar made me get a poster from here. Just a poster
A
was
beautiful
It's a
poster,
rare
by the way.
30,
purchase.
35, $40, I think that single poster was, which in INR is
Do
something.
you have it handy?
I think
It's
Shankar.
Shankar.
it's there. I've hung it in my
Yeah, the
house.
first thing I asked Shankar was, Shankar, why are you spending so much on a poster? Like you would get it in Bangalore in the streets for 100, 200 rupees, but he got something for 3,000 or 4,000 rupees. But no, that's him, right? I think he
Yeah.
understood. Like that's what he's talking about. And on the same lines, for me personally, I think I am little poor in spending for comfort from my like background or from my upbringing or whatever. But one thing I realized little later on in life is, uh, if you think you'll regret something just because money is stopping you, I think you should just spend and do it, right? Like I don't think convenience or doing some extra work for me I will regret later. But for example, I actually went for a Metallica concert in 2019 from India in US. They do that concert once in 20 years. Like this happened after 20 years, and at that point in time, that concert ticket was at least two times my monthly salary, right? So, but I still said I will go for it because if I miss it, I will regret that later in life, right?
Hey, Metal. So this is a very interesting perspective, and that's what I want to focus a lot of time on. And this is where O2's this generation perspectives would also really help. See, you went ahead and did that because you thought it was YOLO. You only live once experience, and you are okay that, hey, I know it's too much money to spend a couple of months' salary, but I will never get it back. And this is something that I see a lot with my friends where they label a lot of their expenses that way. It could be a trip to Thailand, Japan, or Goa, or what else? Do you have like any other examples of spends that you have seen with you or your friends that goes under this bucket?
Mostly, yeah, because we all have credit cards, right? We end up spending more than what we can actually afford. That's the whole point of the credit card system. Sometimes I have regretted it, thinking maybe I should be a lot more mindful when I'm using my credit cards. Um, but yeah, that's one thing. After that, I realized there is this
Concerts.
concept.
Yeah.
Concert,
Concerts
yeah.
is it's another recent example where people sell out a lot of money on Coldplay. Sorry, I had a cold. So yeah, going back to my original question, where do you draw
One
the
thing,
line? Yeah.
sorry, Chris, but one thing, I think when I said comforts, to me, the poster example that Ashwin gave is still an extravagance, right? When I said comfort, what I was thinking in my mind was like absolute basic things, like get a better bed, get a better house, get a better bike. The things that you use on a regular basis, if you just spend a little more money on it, you can get something in much higher quality, which will lead to like long term comfort. I
Yeah,
meant those
actually,
things.
funny you should say
Versus, these are
that.
still like concert is still a pleasure spending to me.
Yeah.
Concert or like the poster thing,
I have
right?
like two
So,
pillows, and I had an option between an 8 pound set and a 5 pound set. And your conversions and the first week in London, I went with the 5 pound one, and I regret it like every day. There is
Yeah,
absolutely nothing in it. I should have
that's
just.
also my point, right? Sometimes you end up spending more, probably let's say on a TV or a bike or whatever. You realize that the lifetime of that is more than something that you get for a cheaper price, right?
Yeah,
So in a way, I see that as an investment, but I think, like he said, we should know where to draw the line.
that's true. So that's my question.
So
So where do you draw? Like Ashwin said, hey, Metallica comes once in 20 years.
hmm.
This is, no, I'm not gonna do anything. Where do you draw that line? That's the big question. Like, see, let's say we are all in IT, and technically I am not, but
You are a student.
so all of us can say afford a 60,000 trip to Thailand. It's a very classic example that I see everybody
Mhm.
doing. Everybody can afford that without a big dent in their wallets, so to speak. But is it allowed? Is it okay to do so?
I don't know who's taking that, but see, it's very personal for now, like where you are with finance, how much savings you have, how long have you been working, how much money are you going to inherit in the future. I think there's just so much variables to answer that question, Chris.
Yeah.
And let's not get there, right? Let's see, we are we are not trying to give financial advice or suggestions or how to manage your money. I think there are enough financial influencers online. Like there are a few of my
and
favorites we'll share towards the end.
mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. So,
A lot of
Read
these
all
investments,
scheme related documents carefully.
a lot of these investments are at your own risk, at your own like goals, whatever you wanted to have. But like, see, today there is just so much resources available. How do you start and how do you choose, right? That's basically what we are kind of talking about. And the other thing also we wanted to cover is money versus working for passion for the job, right? That also kind of plays into this because everybody would want a certain lifestyle. Like everybody would love to go to Thailand maybe every 2 months, 3 months, as long as you earn 100 times of that cost, right? But not everybody would want to do the job even if it pays well because you just like doing something else. And I think a lot of our audience today would also want to balance that. How do I get a like what do I optimize for? Should I optimize for a better money and take up any job that comes up, or should I optimize for a job that I can grow with, that I like, for a better payday later? uh, how do you see this? Either one of you, and then I'll share my thoughts.
I think it doesn't make sense to like do something you absolutely hate, but also in any job that you get, 20-30% is going to be boring, annoying, or there's going to be org tax that you will pay. So I think you should always optimize for what can I sustainably do that'll once in a while make me happy, where I can make a good amount of money. So that's what I would do, right? So, okay, I have these skills. What can I put them to good use for? And can I actually do that job for day in and day out, months in and months out, without actually feeling so unhappy or feeling reasonably happy? I think that is more than enough. That's how I would think about it. But yeah.
Yeah, I love your use of sustainable there. Like what works on a daily, weekly basis. I think recently I saw this post from Gary V, if I'm not mistaken. Does work-life balance really matter if you hated the 50 hours you're working on something, and that applies to matters of money as well, right? So there are three ways you can look at it. Either you can do something that you absolutely love, and be okay with not making money for a long time, and eventually you have like one big payday. So this is what founders from 15 years ago used to do when they were bootstrapping companies, and actors are a fantastic example of this, right? If you take somebody like Vijay Sethupathi, we didn't get to know the man until he was like 40, and by 40 you are like looking at a very successful person in a tech industry. For context, he was a nobody until then, but he was okay with making little to no money, playing supporting roles, and just getting by for a good 10-15 years even. But now I'm pretty sure like he can afford every luxury he wants in the world, because he was okay struggling for a really long time and waiting for that big payday. And the other end of that spectrum is, with all due respect, your Wall Street bros or your consultants who hate their job, who can't seem to stop cribbing about their job, but they still put up with it because they make a lot of money doing that, and they just shut off from work after a working week, and then they use the money to go live their lifestyle. And in between is where I'm guessing we have people like you
Yeah.
and me. We are not necessarily doing something that we absolutely love, but we are okay to trade that off for doing something that we are good at, for which somebody is willing to pay us decent money.
That's probably what I had in mind as well. And I think this answers the question that we had before: where do we draw the line?
Hmm.
Sustainability should be it. Probably, I think I'm too early in my career to talk about how finance works, but I have been into fitness for quite a while, and that's what fitness, talks about all the time. Yeah, you could stick to a diet which will starve you, which you probably won't get enough nutrients or whatever. You will probably get to where you want to go, but it won't last for a long time, right? So if you are sustainable or able to strike the balance, that works out well for you in the long run as well. At the same time, you will be happy as well, like relatively happy. So I think that works here. The same principle kind of works here.
Okay,
Do
okay.
you have anything to add, Ashwin?
No, no, that kind of answers to what I was thinking as well. Good points, Bot and O2. Okay, now when I again recollecting whatever we spoke, right? For all the listeners here, I just have one question again to ask all of you before we kind of close the episode. Let me actually start with Bot. Bot, I think you have 4 to 5 years of
Yeah.
work experience, right? Uh, no, at no point in time it's too early. Like no point is too late to start like, investing money or looking at how money can work for you, right? What is like with what you know today? What is that one advice that you think I wish I had known 5 years back when I started my first or when I received my first paycheck?
This could be very personal to me, but I have feeling a lot of people listening also come from similar backgrounds. Ashwin, you brought this up earlier, right? So a lot of decisions that we make, our outlook on money is just baggage from our childhood, what we had, what we didn't have. And we see these posts every now and then, occasionally people getting their salary and going and spending on a Hot Wheels because they were never allowed to have that as a child, right? Like I famously went to Qatar and bought an expensive remote control car when I was finally able to afford that. um, so one of the downsides to this baggage is also sometimes, at least for me, I felt like I was limited in my thinking of what I deserve for the work I do. So there have been times when I could have gotten a job offer for, let's say, 10 lakhs. I could have easily gotten for 12 lakhs or 13 lakhs, but I don't think I ever negotiated enough, because on some level, coming from a tier 2 town and somebody paying me just because I know English, it felt like they were doing me a favor by hiring me, right? This is not like specific to any company or any particular position I might have held, but the very feeling of, hey, I don't really deserve this, I'm glad that somebody is doing it, so I'm going to accept for whatever that they want me to do it for. So in hindsight, I would avoid that mindset. Like,
Okay.
to put it plainly, like I would ask for more. It's I would be more
Uh,
comfortable asking for
I
more
think, yeah,
without feeling greedy.
I think, I think the one thing everyone should remember from what you're saying is you're always worth more than you think you are, right? I think typically you default to the other one, the other mode, but that's not true, right? So yeah,
Okay. Uh, O2, I know you're also pretty new in career. One thing that you wish you knew when you had your first paycheck, but you don't know. What is it?
Uh, Probably, it's. I think compounding is what I think we all should know from the beginning of the career. Even if you are saving as small as 1,000 rupees per month or even 5K per month, it all adds up and eventually you'll end up with a bigger money. And SIP is something we all should know right from day one. I got to know it a little later. So, and the other one is having two bank accounts by default will probably one purely for saving money or having an emergency fund. The other one just to spend. So as in when you receive a salary, you transfer probably 50% of it and spend only the rest. That is also a way to control the impulsive spending that we end up doing if we have one bank account. These
Yeah.
two are something that I really wish can
So
help
we'll take
anybody,
that
even if
as
they.
do less impulse spending. That's the takeaway from that.
Yep, yep.
what,
Shankar,
what is the what is the one thing I wish I knew? Okay,
in your first paycheck.
thinking what? I'm okay. I'm thinking. What is the one thing I wish I knew?
Yeah.
There are many things.
Okay, then
I think.
hmm.
Hmm, yeah, you talk about it
I'll go
first.
for it, and then you can probably share and close.
This bit can be edited.
No, for me, one thing I kind of learned later on from someone is you should get to a point where money can work for you, and like all the saving and investing that we do, right? It's getting to a point where you make money work for you, and you should reach a point where you're done working for money, right? The sooner you get there, the better it is. Um, Probably there are two like broader things I wish I knew. One is like understand money enough, understand how it works, how economy works. Like economics is a subject that I think all of us in school would have just brushed but not really understood. It's very very important for like a lot of us in life. Understand how money works and make money work for you. The second broader thing that I wish I knew was diversification. Like having all eggs in one basket is just not like smart way to look at money. The more and more avenues you get to know, like start with one and then get to know 5 or 6 to 10 or 15. Like once you get to a stage, your exposure and your network, your social circle also has to evolve for people to tell you what to do with your money. For example, someone having like 1 lakh savings will look at different things versus someone having 1 crore savings, someone having 10 crore savings, right? You will get to a point where like today celebrities are investing abroad, for all, like it's their own thing, right? Tax and everything will come. Like at every stage you will have to look at your exposure and knowledge you have on investments should also evolve. Like you cannot do the same things that you did with 1 lakh once you have 10 lakhs, right? And once you have 1 crore, it has to be different. And that's how you diversify. Just know more avenues to make your money grow. Like diversification is key to uh, safeguarding your wealth. I did not like I realized this a lot later after
Yeah.
making
And
mistakes.
this is especially true with tech, where you close a lot of avenues even before giving it a serious thought. Like, something like buying land in a tier two town. It doesn't feel novel. It doesn't feel sophisticated. Hey, I would rather put that money in Bitcoin, man. So it actually helps. It actually helps to go basic sometimes. And before we close out, I have something to
Oh,
say.
Shankar hasn't shared his yet.
I don't know. There's a lot of things that come to my mind.
Now you're like the
I was
school
actually
teacher.
I was thinking about what is my biggest learning, right? I think early in my career, I wish looking back that I had saved more. Then once I started making some money, I wished that I had spent on comforts earlier than I had actually had. Then I think like Ashwin is saying, right? You reach a point where you have a lot more money compared to like uh, you have more money than you can spend on basic necessities, and then at that point, I think you have to start thinking about like what are the bets you can make, right? So you have money in your SIP, you have your basic needs met. Now, what should I do with this money? Right? It can be anything. Maybe give it to a wealth management firm, or maybe give it to like friends who are like starting a business if you're willing to take that risk. So I think thinking about these in three different phases, when you start out, when you're in the middle, and later, probably makes a difference. The other thing that came up to my mind is you really don't have to think about money like your parents did. At every stage, like at least for a millennial, uh, it's always been about savings. So there was enormous guilt about spending your money. Even if you end up saving a lot of money, there was always guilt for me and people in my generation to like spend it, right?
And leave
But
spending. Like, there is a lot of guilt associated with making money.
yeah,
And
I
then your
think
parents
yeah, that's
talking to your
true. That's
relatives.
true. Talking about money, making money, and like spending money. So I think sometimes their advice makes sense, but a lot of time is it doesn't. So you don't have to, that doesn't mean I'm saying like you have to be on the extreme and like spend on extravagances all the time. But I think it's important to sit and think about what you want to do about money, if not on an every month basis, at least like 10 hours a year, right? So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna take 1 minute and I make it a point to talk about this, whichever forum is relevant. I feel as a generation, we are treading on a very thin line here because our whole emphasis on you live once, die, whatever that quote is. I can't even like
You
get
only live once. How hard is
you
it?
only live once, right? So a lot of our spending habits revolve around that. The only problem is, unlike the previous generations where there is a blueprint for this is how they lead their life from age 20 to age 80. Like for example, most of us have seen our grandparents, our parents do that. So we know that this end outcome is very satisfactory. But our generation doesn't know that. We are over indexing on spending, living the life 20 when you're 25, 30, without really giving a lot of thought as to how this is going to look when you're 65 or 70. So we haven't had a 70-year-old from our generation to warn us, hey, I did this but it's not actually great. It feels like we are already looking down on the previous generation as if we have found some magical way of managing finances, optimizing for experience, convenience, etc., etc., while not having lived life to the fullest. I know I sound like a doomsday merchant, but this is something that I actually think about a lot. Yeah.
Okay. 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 Yeah. Thanks for that. I think good chat, good perspective from I think Bot and O2. You see, there is no right or wrong, right? When it comes to money, there's no right or wrong. It's your money. I think
That's true.
to your discretion, you'll have to spend it the way you would want. There is no best advice. There is no worst advice at all. World functions in a very weird way. Currencies work in a very weird way. When COVID happened, a lot of us thought we should have done this before. We were like, oh,
Yeah.
what are we going to do sitting with money now? And there was also polar end of other people where a lot of people wanted money, they didn't have it because they didn't save it. So you'll never know what life will throw at you, but the more planned we are as an individual, the better it is.
That's true.
And treat money like a game, make it work for you. The earlier on you make some decisions, the better it is. I think that's the reason we wanted to kind of share our thoughts here.
Yeah, I think this was a pretty solid episode. The only regret or only miss is we don't have body. The first episode that we have done without body, and without, like, it feels weird to close the episode where he doesn't say his usual punchline. Or what? Maybe let's fix that.
Hope we embodied his presence.
Hey.
Oh, he's here.
Don't forget to
Hello.
like, share, subscribe.
Thanks everyone, take care. See you in the next one.
Thank you.